Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am so honored to join all of these organizations that are here standing up for democracy. And it's also amazing to be directly in front of the Washington Monument and the Capitol, which represents the Capitol meeting, and those who are there are supposed to represent all of us. Now, most of us, and certainly myself, I would say, could not imagine that a year would have come. It's January 6th of 2021, where citizens of America came and attacked their house of government. There would have been a totally different dynamic if people came just to protest, because we all have the right to protest. But when it becomes violent and it becomes an insurrection, that is unacceptable. Now, since January 6th, by the way, January 5th, in my state of Georgia, we elected our first African-American United States Senator, Raphael Warnock, and our first Jewish Senator, Jan6Justice. A compilation of grassroots organizations and organizers came together for that to happen. And of course, because Senator Warnock was filling the term of a former senator, or getting ready or running for that seat, or a senator retired from, he now is running again on the ballot in Georgia, along with a very talented and extraordinary woman running for governor, Stacey Abrams. Mostly what I am saying, though, is that when evil occurs, good people must come together to stand up and stomp that evil out. There's a lot, and if we just dealt with majority, which is really the issue, the majority of Americans are not engaging the points of views that are being actually won today by the minority in terms of numbers. And that's why it's so critically important for everyone to vote, even though 20 plus states have passed laws to make it harder to vote. In my own state, if you give somebody water who's standing in line, that is a crime, and you will be given a ticket. That is egregious, that a nation that is supposed to be about freedoms would say that because someone has to stand in line for hours, you can't give them water. But there are many more laws. There are laws that have been put on the books where gerrymandering has occurred so that full representation is not happening. And so I am so honored to be here today for all of us who are standing up. It's not one of us. All of us must stand up to make sure democracy is preserved for all people. We have an 8-year-old daughter, Yolanda Renee King, who is an activist. And I'm so thankful, my wife and I are so thankful and grateful, because we have not told her that's what she should do. This is something that is in her DNA, in her soul, in her spirit. But do you know that in 2008, when she was born, she had more rights than she has today? In 2013, the first beginning of rights being diminished was the Voting Rights Act was dismantled by the United States Supreme Court. And then this year, reproductive rights were decimated by the United States Supreme Court. This is one of the reasons why every election is important. Had more of us who are in the majority come out even in 2016, we may not have this outcome that we're dealing with right now. I think you have to go back and point out the history to begin to move forward. So I think my father would say, now is the time. He often used that phrase. For us to bring reconciliation, not reconciliation as a whole, but we do need that ultimately. But for us to come together, to use our franchise, because a voteless people is a powerless people. And one of the most important steps that we take is that short step to the ballot box. Earlier, one of our speakers talked about the number of election deniers that are on the ballot. That's a frightening proposition. Now, while we're small in numbers here today, we have a capacity through our social media exchanges to reach hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. Because I can assure you, for those who may be considering not participating, that we need to use, again, our voices to make stuff go viral. Because if I was here today, standing up here without a tie and a shirt, just a jacket with my chest showing, the whole nation would know before I got off the stage, Martin Luther King III came to a rally and something's wrong with him. That's gossip. We need to use gossip in a different way so that we can let people know not just that the election is coming and people are voting right now, but we all need to participate for our children and our children's children and generations yet unborn. Humankind has to come together to save our nation because our nation is in trouble. This is a beyond crisis. All of us are the choir, and we know that. But there are some out there who don't realize. So we have got to come together, and I'm just going to say vote. Sometimes I talk about specific agendas, but we have to navigate sometimes because we have all types of different organizations. And voting is nonpartisan. But when I hope people choose to become partisan in this case, because we all know who are the culprits. And we see every day what is being done. My dad talked about eradicating triple evils of poverty, racism, and violence. We know who the racists are. We see the things they do every day. The Supreme Court, for the first time, probably in modern history, if not ever, chose a stand to restrict our rights. We have often and always been able to go to the courts for expansion. It has always been about expansion. And they told us through Justice Thomas what they're going to do. Next, they're coming after marriage equality. And we don't know how many other rights. All of this being going backward, looking backward as opposed to be looking forward. For our nation to be all that it can be, and everybody to be all that they can be, we have to look forward. What I know as I get ready to close is all it takes is a few good women and men. My dad and mom validated that by what was done, not just in the 60s, but really all throughout. I remember my mom working on the King holiday, visiting every member of Congress. I remember other things that she was engaged in over the longer life that she was able to live, whereas my father was gunned down in 1968, not completing his work. So part of my goal is to help create the climate for the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, not just to be envisioned, but for that dream to come to fruition. We begin that process. Part of that beginning is us casting our votes. So I say to you, don't give in, don't give up, don't give out. We're going to keep moving forward until justice, equality, freedom, and voting rights are achieved for all human beings in this nation that we call home. Thank you, and may God bless each and every one of you always.